Alright guys, I spotted a bug on my meetings controller that was kind of a bad one. I want to check first if the current user is only seeing their specific meetings relative to their ID. So to do that, I had to perform a different query on the index controller. I updated that in real time. This was something that just happened. And I noticed on, well, screencasting, but I also wanted to check if the current user was an admin. I'd rather them see all the meetings so they can do any actions on it from that point. So that's kind of handy to do just in line like this. Then we query through it elsewhere in the app the same way on the index view. So in light of that, I'm an admin logged in right now. I could see two meetings set up with Jane Smith and John Smith, two different accounts. I could see the details of that and of course modify it, cancel it if I want to. If I log in as John Smith, you'll see the difference in the UI of that calendar. If I go to dashboard, I only see the one, which is the whole point. I only see ones relative to me, which is my personal account and what I want. So I hope that's clear. Aside from that, I'm going to go back to my admin account and fix up the stuff that's wrong with it based on the admin level properties. So currently I have just the dashboard and log out button. I want to add one more that is a user's controller. So what I'll end up actually doing is creating a custom users controller to show a list of our active users. And I'll do this manually because it's not really a big deal to do. Create a class, users, controller, application, controller. And in that, I want to make a before action. It's my kind of my own custom one. Now there's gems out there to help you with this stuff, like one called can. But it's really targeted at an app with a lot of roles as opposed to one where you just need an admin role. Up to you how you want to do it. Realistically, you could just do something pretty simple like this and get away with it, unless your app is huge. So just keep that in mind. So here I'm going to do a before action called must be admin, and we can call this just by saying unless current user .admin, basically using my handy helper. We'll redirect to meetings path and alert. The meetings path will end up being kind of the root after you log in. Don't have access to this page. So a couple things, we'll end up reusing this, but you could extract it into a concern, which is more or less like including a module that would look like include yada 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 here, which you can include in other classes. It's probably the more better approach, but for this purpose and to be more clear, I just want to get it to where we're getting the logic down. Maybe I'll do some more stuff about concerns later on, but you'll notice that folder in both the controllers and models folder at the moment, which is pretty handy when they come into play. All right, that's basically it for this controller. What we need to do is add a views for the users as well. So users, and I only need an index view, I think. Index or show? Index and then partial. So we'll do index, and we will need a route too, so I'll hook that up. So the index is just going to be a container, margin auto, kind of just other stuff we've used elsewhere. And that will have h1, that's going to be a text indigo, darker, pattern bottom of 2, border bottom, border gray light, and margin bottom. all for the little span of text that is users. And finally, we'll render users, and a really shorthand way to render a partial that's called users and all the users, and you can just do render at users. So that Rails will know to look for a partial in the users directory called user and loop through it. You only have to do the .each thing that you've seen elsewhere. So it's a sweet convention that really simplifies code. I'm gonna go ahead and copy this code to save time. It's really not anything we haven't seen before. Because this is outside of devise, we will need to add custom stuff around the user here. So we got the username, user level, all that stuff, basic stuff here. So you can delete the user as well. With the admin side of it, because devise is devise, you can't quite edit a user without being logged in as them, but there is such a thing, a gem called it devise administrate, or masquerade, I think, and it lets you log in as other users, which is pretty cool. I haven't tried that out yet. I might have to do a video on that, but I've seen it. Yeah, here we're checking if the user has any meetings before displaying anything here. If they do, we'll go ahead and loop through those. So next we need to update the routes. Route, found it. It took me forever. And that's going to basically be resources, users, and I only want the index right now, so you can just go ahead and declare that. That way it keeps that from being an open book for someone else trying to visit the site on a specific user's path. I wrote that wrong. There we go. Cool. So with that, we should be able to visit users as an admin and see this stuff, which is cool. It looks pretty junky though. Let me clean that up a little bit. On user level, we could do, say, margin bottom 5, just to give a little space between each, or not. No? We did do 5, so maybe 10. I'm conflicting styles there. There we go. It's a little better, not great though. I think I'm on the wrong thing. There we go, something like that. So because I'm admin level, I can visit this path and see this and modify a user if I want to. I've got 2 here. So what I want to do, just to give you an example of what that looks like if if I'm not an admin, log in, oh, you find out there's a user's path for some reason, and it'll go back to this page and show a notice that you don't have access to that page. So that's kind of cool. So that's something you can do at the controller level to just make sure that admins only have admin roles where they should, and users should not. So on top of that, I want to add some additional admin level stuff to the meetings controller. So I'll add that same method here. So before action, must be admin only. This is going to be a custom path, active sessions. And active sessions is basically just a way of getting where the end time is different than now. So def active sessions. Not quite sure why it made this, but I'm going to go ahead and type it out for you guys. Let's see. Active sessions equals a meeting. I was probably doing this really late and just like, oh, let's do that. Yeah. And we'll browse by the end time on the meeting, and we'll check if it's greater than now, and we can do that by just saying time.now, now, not new. So then back in our routes, we need to add that in. Let me see my notes here. So that's just going to be a basic get. So that would look like this. So get active sessions to meetings, and we'll go straight to that action. So we'll tell it where to head. Like so. So that's a basic get request. So that lets us go to get active sessions. This shouldn't work for, it'll give me error. Yeah, so we need to go and add that method in here since I've already added it on the other controller. So let me just honestly just copy this bit here. Actually, this bit. And we'll add that to the meetings controller too. So you see why I was mentioning concerns. Here's where we can include that, and it would just be easy peasy. All right, cool. So now if I refresh this, it should hopefully, if I typed it right, active sessions before action. Can't type. So right there, we'll do that. Boom. You don't have access to the page. I'm not an admin, so let me sign in as admin. And we'll do that again. So we'll need an actual view for this as well. So I'll need to create a folder. So we don't have the active sessions view. So I can go ahead and make a folder in, or make a file in the meetings folder called active sessions. It's kind of unorthodox. You won't see this a lot, but if your app needs something completely custom, it's just kind of maybe a route you could take. So we'll match the method name here. And I already messed that up, should be plural. Boom. All right, inside that I'll have just some boilerplate content as well. So I'm gonna copy this because I think you guys can get the hint. So we have our base container that we've been having. We have active sessions, and then we're looping through each like we've been doing for our other user stuff. The difference with these are that I'm querying based on the current time in our controller. It's checking to see if the end time is greater than now. So basically meetings that haven't ended already and meetings that are coming up. So in that, we should be able to see the upcoming meetings here. So if they've already ended, they shouldn't technically be here. I could have that logic wrong. I did this fast and pretty late, so bear with me. But that's how that looks. So we can see those come out. That's admin only. So if you logged out, you can't see this if you weren't admin. But other than that, everything's looking pretty good. One last thing I want to do is real quick on the index page, I added some base marketing stuff. I'll show you on the home page. I'm just gonna copy that over from this. It's way too much HTML to write right now, but it's just boilerplate stuff. So feel free to reference it. I'm basically checking the main logic here is I'm checking if a user signed in. If they are, I will render a new session. Otherwise, they'll be greeted with a CTA that is a sign up path. So our index ends up looking like this, which is kind of nice. There's those illustrations from that Undraw app as well. So with that done, we can move on to mailers next. I could probably do that in this video. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it is another concept of Rails that you might need a little getting familiar with. Mailers work quite like controllers. you can generate those just like you would a controller. So let's go ahead and do that first. I'll just show by example. So Rails generate mailer, and we'll say meeting mailer. Cool. So the difference here is we have an app mailers directory. We're going to have one there. There's going to be a view in the views folder that is the meetings mailers. And inside this method, you could define multiple properties that are different emails. And what they end up doing is basically you can call them throughout the app where you need to and send them based on what actions happen in other controllers and whatnot. So what I'll end up doing is we need to include helpers from the application helper file so we can use this inside of our view. The view is going to end up being the actual email that gets sent into an email client. So that's something to take into account as well. So you'll end up having to sadly write old ass code. It's quite annoying, and I've done it recently for my work, but it's basically a bunch of tables and stuff that it's just a pain to write because email clients are so out of date. So I'm going to end up creating a method called message meeting scheduled that's going to be in our meetings mailer. So let me open up meeting mailer. I've got that there. The helpers here correlate to the helpers in our project. So what I want is access to these in our view. So that's what this line indicates. So I'm just including that helper. So I have that access to the view. Otherwise, I can't quite access everything I do in an email as I would in a typical view because it's being sent to an email provider or through a service as a subscription kind of email. One thing to note on the application mailer, there's a default from. If you want to change that here, you certainly can. A lot of times you might do something that is from different emails or different audiences. They want to see who it's from. If it's a different person, you might want to change that based on the mailer. So for the sake of this one, I'll just do a default from on this particular mailer of notifications at consultly.com. And that's per mailer. So if you want to set that up custom per mailer, you certainly can, or you can just have a global one that's just like no reply at webcrunch.com or something. So that's handy. And let's make that method meeting scheduled. Sorry if you hear my dog. She keeps barking left and right. Scheduled. And cool. So what I want to do is hook into, actually, why don't I come back to this because it's not going to make sense in the context here. Let's go to the controller of our meetings and I'll explain what I want to do. On a successful meeting request, I want to send a confirmation of the payment plus the email itself and the details to the user who actually submitted the request for the session. So what I can do is actually render that and send off an email by doing so after it's saved. So you definitely check first if it's saved. If it is, we'll go ahead and hook into meeting mailer, which is our class that we just defined as the mailer right there, this thing here. And what I do is hook into that. I go grab the meeting. This allows us to pass the meeting through to the email itself. It gives us properties of the meeting, and then you can define multiple things to pass through. So I'm going to pass through the current user too, and then this will be the next part will be what we defined as the method here. So I called it meeting scheduled. You can call it whatever you want depending on what kind of email you're sending. And then finally, thanks to Sidekick and Redis, which we have running in our Foreman background, we're able to send this later. So we'll queue it up with Sidekick to do so. If you recall at the very beginning, if you've made it this far with me, our app has an active job queue adapter of Sidekick, which we set with a template. This wouldn't come this way normally, but you can easily set it just like this. So what I'll do is save that down, and this is going to be what and kicks off as soon as a meeting gets saved. And with that, it will send the meeting through, it will send the current user through as parameters. So in theory, in the mailer, we can access those parameters as well and save them as variables to use in the actual email. It's like just taking parameters, passing them through different controllers, getting them to the view so you can access them and give the user at the end of the email something really valuable to actually know about, as opposed to just like a success message. So we're going to pass through the user, and then on each mail method you can perform mail this way. So you'll target the user email, since we have that instance of them, and then you can set a subject in line like this, new session confirmation. So what that does is actually tells the email to send. Once it does send, it gives us this data to pass through to it. We have the data of the meeting because of the method invoked. It's also coming through when it's being sent here. So with that in mind, our actual email can look and function like a real pretty nice email. So I'm not going to type this out because it's tables, and tables are the death of me. But what I want to do is just show you what I ended up doing and passing this in. So we have access to the meeting and user component, like I said, thanks to these parameters we set up here. You can style your email however you want. Inline styles are your best bet, fail-safe solution in most cases, but definitely check the way these look. Rails gives you a nice preview of what you can find in the test directory, which is outside of the app directory, way down here, mailers, previews. And when you generate a mailer, it generates one by default here called preview, but you still need to do some setup. That's going to be just creating a basic mail instance to basically use as a guide. So what I'll do is create the same method as we did in the class, and meeting mailer with meeting. So we'll get meeting first, which basically says of all our meetings, just grab the first one. It just says like a selected pool of data. Same with the user, equals user.first, which should be me. And then you can perform the meeting scheduled method here. I think that should work. That seems kind of odd, but let me double check. You'll see a comment here of where you can view that mailer. I'm going to go ahead and go to this link, but make sure it's 5,000, not 3,000, because we're using Foreman. So 5,000. And you'll see the meeting scheduled mailer there. Hopefully it renders. It does. Cool. So I've included a link to the actual an image that's in my file directory. You want to actually put URLs, absolute URLs, in your emails. So links to, like, say, login. See how I added URL instead of path? That's so you get the full URL, because a path wouldn't make sense in an email. It would send you nowhere. So you want to definitely make sure you have that in check. Image tags should work based on the fact that they're in a mailer. I'm not 100% there, but I haven't tested this on a production environment. But I did used to do this stuff for my side apps and stuff, and it seemed to work. But anyway, this is what it looks like. We have our first bit of data. It's all just test data. It's based on the first user, which was me, and then the first meeting, which was created by me too. So you can queue that in however you want. If you want to change what meeting comes through on the preview, you could do last if you want. So say last. And that should update to, I think, Jane Smith. Yeah, so there we go. So pretty cool. And you can see we've got our helpers thanks to that helper I included in our view. So thanks to this line here, we're able to use our application helpers, which we've defined way before. So guys, I think that's pretty close to it. If I forgot some stuff, I'm sorry. This was a kind of a long spiel of an app. It took quite some time to get together. I wanted it to look nice, most of all. And also just touch on mailers. As far as getting mailing set up for your live environment, it's kind of a process, but it is possible. You just go to your config, environments, and production. Here you can set all of your whatever you want to do for your jobs on your production side. So say here I'd probably use Sidekick if you want to do that. Here, say you're using a app called SendGrid, which I would use for subscription emails or mass emails. I'd really recommend doing that. They'll give you some API credentials to include in your configuration so you know how to handle that. It's just a lot of setup in the end, but once it is, it's kind of a fail-safe, easy solution to get going. But aside from that, guys, I think that's it. Our app's looking good. Let me go ahead and double check. Just so you, I didn't mention it here, but you can see the from and to as preview as well as a subject, which is pretty handy. But yeah, aside from that, here is our app. It's working pretty good. I've got the admin logged in at the moment. So I can do all these things like cancel meetings or see meetings. I can go to the user path, which I need to update in my layout real quick. Let me update that. So here I'll have access to users now, so I can go directly to that path and see what's coming up for each person. This lets me, as the admin, the person probably running the meetings, know what's coming up and when and all that stuff. So hopefully this helped you. If you want to see different kind of concepts or ideas, I'm happy to show them. Building entire apps takes a lot of time and effort. So if you can at least like or give me feedback on this or subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. I do have some stuff I'm working on that's kind of even more thorough, kind of in the course format that's coming up. I'll talk more on that soon. I just wanted to continue this Let's Build with Rails and keep things rolling. I love this framework and I'm learning new stuff each day. There's so much more to learn and I can't wait to learn more. So thanks for tuning in, and that's it for now. Peace.